So good evening, everyone. Mr. Chair, we do now have quorum, so we can proceed with starting the meeting, if that's okay. So I am briefly just going to go over the list of panelists that we have this evening. So like I said, we do have quorum with all committee members present, with the exception of Rachel Askett, Emily Monroe, Jim Mahoney, Kristen Wozniak, John Donahue, Nathan Splinter, and Tasman Lang. Some of them have sent their regrets, others may show up at some point. And staff with us tonight are Julie Salter-Keene, Elizabeth Fawcett is our host this evening, as well as myself, Julia McCarty-Jansman, committee clerk. And we have no members of the public with us currently. Mr. Chair, I'll turn it over to you to start the meeting.
Great. Sorry about that. I'm at my cousin's cottage, and so there was another call came in on his fancy computer system here. So I'll call the meeting to order. We need to have approval of the agenda, so hopefully everybody's had a chance to read that. Were there any additions or omissions to that agenda? Seeing none, I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to approve those minutes. Matthew Elliott and Councillor Doherty. All those in favor? Carried. We need to confirm the minutes. I don't think we've got anything added to those minutes, no addendums, so set out as our agenda. Oh, sorry, I did the agenda. Confirmation of the last meeting's minutes. Hopefully you've all had a chance to read that. Were there any additions or deletions to those minutes? Seeing none, I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to approve those minutes. Milda and Councillor Neal. All those in favor? Confirmed. Disclosure of any pecuniary interest for tonight's agenda. Seeing none, and we have, I believe, no delegations, and so we'll, or briefing, so we'll head directly to the business, and that's, I'm going to turn that over to, I guess, Julie Salter-Keene for the presentation of the business.
Great, thank you very much. So I'm here tonight with respect to the 2021-2022 donation campaign for the Kingston Community Climate Action Fund. As you recall, Council approved the program last year, and we ran the program successfully with 2 applications that had come before you. This year, we ran the campaign in August to September. We received 3 applications that are before you from Cycle Kingston, looking for funding for the bicycle valet at $15,200. So it's the public donation would run again from December 1st to March 31st. Extended Family Kingston, the hydroponic greenhouse, they're looking for donations of $36,000. And Sustainable Kingston, the rain garden project, $20,000, where they would install 4 rain gardens on public housing on 4 different properties. Staff have reviewed them to ensure eligibility and that they meet the criteria of the fund approved by council, and we're recommending that all 3 do. We, however, have the evaluation guide and the full applications within your package today for Keith to review and to ensure that you support that, or if you support other ones, that's fine. With respect to last year's campaign, we had Martha's Table, who we fundraised for an electric vehicle, and Habitat for Humanity, where they installed air source heat pumps in their homes. I'm just looking to see. So the funding that we through public donations that ran, as I said, December 1st to March 31st of The past year, we raised 43,000, which included 15,000 that council supports the program with, and the Kingston Community Credit Union that we have partnered with, they have matched $5,000. So it was a total of 43,611. I'm happy to inform that both Martha's Table and Habitat had additional funding, so they both were able to proceed with the purchase of the EV, and for Habitat, the installation of the air source heat pumps. So they had the other sources, so that was exciting news as well. Even though we didn't reach those targets, we felt it was a very successful campaign considering it was the first year and it was a pandemic. So we were very happy with what we have done. Over the last year, we've revamped what we're going to be doing as what for the application process, which we're really happy with the applications that came in this year. Certainly like out of the box, so not the typical ones you're thinking of, but certainly some really unique ones that we have received. We held a couple seminars, information sessions in the spring with the nonprofits to assist them in submitting applications. And our fundraising campaign, we're looking at some different actions and items that we can maybe help to bring some additional donations in over those months. And if I have any questions on the applications, I'd be happy to answer them.
Councillor Neal.
Yeah, it looks like 3 great projects. I'm curious, is it possible for us to use communications and our social media to send out information that people can donate to this really worthy cause and actually get a tax receipt? Is that something that we've done in the past or can do in the future?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. Absolutely. We have a massive campaign last year, and we're working with communications as well this year. We had social media. We work with the partners. So last year, we worked with Martha's Table and Habitat to work with their networks. We had billboards. We were on the radio. So and we're looking at some new ideas this year to see if we can get additional donations as well.
I think you're still muted, Councillor Neal.
Looks like a great project that you've organized this year. Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions? Yes, Mr. Dakin.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Just a question about the greenhouse, because that's a structure and I'm assuming approvals will be needed, building permits and any other municipal approvals. If we are to vote to proceed with that project and the city is to proceed to raise money for it or at least provide that option for the public, is it conditional in some way of getting those approvals, or I'm just wondering how that works?
Yeah, so I've been working with Extended Family Kingston. So they do own the property, so they will need a permit, but it would be conditional. So we have agreements that we would enter into with the individual, with each of the organizations, and it lays out what there is required of them.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, and through you. No, they do really look like great projects, particularly the food one. I've been in a lot of meetings recently, and more people are needing to use food service providers, and it's quite daunting and quite sad, the numbers that I've heard recently. So I'm particularly excited about that, but all of the projects really look great. So that's excellent work. So do we have, when somebody donates, do we, like, how can we create a buzz about even donating to turn some of the past donators into kind of to encourage them to keep donating to other projects? For example, like have we given some thought to creating some stickers for the actual project to say this was paid for by the community fund, and also for people who donate that they get a thank you card from the city with a sticker that says, I'm a community member, like I'm a proud community member, that kind of, besides the fact, I think it's important to really properly thank people. I think it would really be an encouraging, adding to the buzz kind of thing about this. We're working together.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and that's a good point about the stickers. So I have written that down because I'm working with my team tomorrow to come up with some additional ideas. So last year, everyone that donated, they got a thank you email from me, personally thanking them for their donation, either because we have the donation platform Canada Helps that they donate through. And when they donate through there, I believe you get an email, like a generated email, but I emailed them separately to thank them for their donation. I then email, and then the people that go into the credit union, if they provide their email address, I emailed them as well. Plus, when they were in there, we had postcards that thanked them when they left. After the campaign ended, I sent them, everybody that had donated, an update to, it was successful and we were planning ahead. And this year, one of the events that we are are looking at doing, if we can be in person, is to host a little get together and invite the people that donated last year, because that's exactly what we want to keep those people in touch and show them that their money worked and that we're going to continue. So there are some events that we're planning, but the sticker, I really like that idea and I've made a note of that. So thank you.
Thanks. And are we measuring at all any greenhouse gas reductions on any of these projects? I think we discussed that early on, but I forget.
So yes, thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so they are required to report to the city within 2 years of their campaign. So they have received partial commitment of the dollars that they've raised. And when they file that report with us, they get the remainder funds. So that is in the agreement as well, because that's the purpose of this fund, is to monitor and report back on the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. So it is part of the agreement with each of the organizations.
Excellent. Thanks.
Mr. Elliott.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your presentation. I'll probably sound like a bit of a broken record, but I agree with all my other members of the committee. That's 3 great projects. My question, I guess, follows up on Councillor Doherty's question about measuring the greenhouse gas reductions, specifically on the bike valet project, because I read here that it says they're going to count the number of bikes they're used and basically estimate the amount of kilometers that would have been driven equivalently by those people to see the GHG reductions. Does that take into account how many of those people would have maybe rode public transit or biked anyway and not necessarily driven in the car by themselves? Perhaps they're in like family units.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, yes. So we will be working with Cycle Kingston. So when they do run these valets, that they confirm with the individuals that are using the valet service of how they would have got there otherwise if they were using the valet service as well.
Perfect, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Mr. Healy?
Yeah, hi, thank you through you, Mr. Chair. Were there only the 3 applications? Did I miss that, or were there others? And can you comment on that?
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, actually, there was one other. It was from the senior center, and they lease the building from the city, and they put in an application for an EV charger. And since it was a city building, we have worked with them to install the EV charger, so that their application was withdrawn.
Okay.
Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I forgot to ask, how hard is it to collect the funds? Like, how's the uptake on this?
Through the donations. So last year, and thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair, we saw like some spikes. So when we first launched in December, there was a big uptake, and then it sort of lulled out. And then, you know, we did push again before the holidays, and we had some uptake. January was absolutely really dead. So we're looking at that now with our events staff and communication staff to see what we can do. And that's why we thought there'd be, you know, in the winter, there might be some other events or something we can tie to. We tied to Family Day, and that brought in a lot of donations as well. So because we knew people were at home through the pandemic, we sort of tied that together. We tied it to Earth Hour in March. So we're looking at, it seemed like whenever we tied it to something, we had some really good uptake in the donations. And so we think that with some of the new events and some social media that we're going to work on and the outreach that we're going to do, we will, you know, have some bigger uptake as well.
Probably around the symposium too, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Thanks.
Are there any other questions? Yes, Mr. Dakin.
And again, through you, just looking at the water garden, the rain garden project, that's something that the Conservation Authority's been interested in either partnering on or leading on our own in the past. We've always promoted kind of green infrastructure. I don't see in the preliminary project expense sheet that they've included interpretive signage or anything like that. Just something that, I'm just looking through it again, just something that we would recommend, and I don't know if that's something the city can contribute to, or the Conservation Authority can partner with them, or they can build into their budget. But, you know, we really want people to learn about alternative stormwater management and low impact development, and 4 or 5 different locations across the city would really provide a good opportunity there. So I don't know if that discussion can be held, and if needed, the Conservation Authority can be part of that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's really great. Thanks, Mike. I've made a note of that because I agree, to be able to educate everyone. It's a really exciting project. When I saw it come in, I was very excited about it. So that's a really good point, that we can use some of these projects to really, raise that awareness through the community.
Councillor Neal.
Yes, and just to follow up to that, I know that particularly under Jim Keach, that Utilities Kingston was very active in promoting that kind of program. So you may want to reach out to utilities to get them engaged as well.
Thank you. I've made that note as well. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Mr. Healy.
And thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Just another question about donors, the number of donors, and are there donors from outside of the city, perhaps? Just can you give me a little bit of sort of a synopsis of who were the donors and where were they from, and what I mean, I think donors had a choice to either direct their funding to one or the other project. Is that going to be the same this year?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. I don't have the number of donors available right now, and I don't know where they come from either. So I can provide that number. I can look at that and provide that number to the clerk, and she could provide it to the committee. But I don't know where they come from. Sorry, there was one more question with respect.
Yeah, a question about directing the donations to
Yes.
several projects.
So yes, so people had the choice to donate to either project. and which they did. But within the agreement as well with the project applicants, it's if there's not enough money raised for your project, this is a requirement of CRA because you're getting a tax receipt. If there's not enough money raised for your project and you can't proceed with your project, that money will be distributed between the other projects as well.
Oh,
so
okay.
people did have that choice, yes.
Okay.
Any further questions? I actually have a question. So I think, can I ask Mr. Elliott to take the chair?
If I can take the chair and I give you the floor.
Thank you. My question is about the greenhouses as well as Mr. Elliott's. I noticed that they were going to measure the GHGs for the water and the utilities used to produce the vegetables as opposed to other farming methods. What I didn't notice was by providing those vegetables over the winter in a greenhouse scenario, those same vegetables would have been produced in California or Mexico or something. And so the trucking, the shipping, the production of those GHGs would also be reduced. And so I think they've got an opportunity to get more GHGs in that scenario as well. That might have been missed, and it could be part of the data that I didn't notice, but I just thought about that as well.
Thank you. That's a good point, and I've made a note of that as well. Thank you very much.
And I guess I'll take the chair back.
No, I have another question.
Then I'll give you the floor back.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. This isn't a question so much as onto one of the proposals. It's just kind of a question about the fund in general. Is that I noticed here that although we have one more proposal this year, the total amount of funds being requested is almost exactly the same. It's only off by like $250. Is that an intentional thing that we want to keep the fund approximately the same size each year, or is that a coincidence?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is a coincidence. I saw that as well when I brought them in and started adding up what they were looking for. I went, oh, wow, that's pretty close to what we were looking for last year. So that's an absolute coincidence. When we did meet, when we had the information sessions in the spring with the nonprofits and the organizations, we spoke to them because some of them, there was one organization, I can't even think which one it is right now, but it was a very large project they were thinking of, and we really asked them they need to think about that if they were bringing it for public donation. It was like, it's out of my mind right now, but it was a very large project. So we did relay to them like it should be reasonable and fundable through public donation. So maybe that's, when we brought that forward during the sessions, maybe they heard that and they tried to keep them at a reasonable amount.
Great, thanks.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none. Julia, we're going to now vote on, or do I present the motion as stated?
Mr. Chair, through you, we have no members of the public, so we don't need to, we have no members to speak to this item, so we can move forward and move and second the motion. Then if anyone has any further comment to it before the vote, then we can do that.
So do we need to reread that? Does everybody sort of see that the Kingston Community Climate Action Fund applications that are reports meet the objectives and eligibility criteria, and that we're approving that for public donation? Can I have a mover and a seconder for that motion? Mr. Dakin and Councillor Neal. Does anybody have anything that they want to add to that motion or change? Then I'll ask for a vote to approve that. Carried. believe we have no motions or notices of motions, but Councillor Neal said we might have some very exciting other business.
I put Julie on the spot. Can you just give a thumbnail sketch of what council accomplished last night with your recommendation?
I can do that, thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair. So council, through their strategic priorities, had directed staff to develop a green standard community improvement plan for new construction. And last night it went to council for consideration and it was approved. So the program is for large multi-residential as well as commercial. And if they build above and beyond the Ontario Building Code to net zero, depending which level they build to, there will be incentivized to build to that level. So right now we have done, I won't go into the huge detail because it's a huge report, but we did a lot of research over the last year and a half with respect to green standards. And other municipalities have approved them, but there is no uptake by developers because the incremental capital cost of constructing above the Ontario Building Code becomes very expensive for developers, and they're not doing it without being incentivized. City of Toronto uses their development charges. So our council approved last night 2 incentive programs. One is a cash rebate, and we anticipate through our research that it'll be for small commercial buildings that are not maintained or retained by the owner after they're built. And then the incremental capital tax rebate program that will incentivize and pay back on the incremental capital costs, depending on what level, from 75% down to 50% over a 10-year period. So it's a very exciting time. So now we will look to prepare to launch that program. We anticipate that, or we hope that we will have approximately maybe 2 applications a year that will take advantage of this program. And the Ontario Building Code by 2030 should be at net zero. So the program will filter out as the level in the Ontario Building Code becomes more stringent. And we are looking forward to launching the program.
That sounds very exciting. Is there any other new business? Any other business? We have no correspondence.
Yeah.
Sorry, am I?
Yeah.
Mr. Healy?
Can I just mention something that is something that it's sort of not quite a notice of motion, nothing formal like that, but there has been some discussion with I was hoping John Donahue, who's a committee member, would be on tonight, but he forwarded to me at a time when he thought I was chair to bring to Keith a proposal to have Kingston become one of these what's called a bird-friendly community, and it has to do with a lot of the stuff. Obviously, he thought Keith was a logical for that. The Kingston Field Naturalists, he's on the board of the Kingston Field Naturalists, and they're prepared, I think, prepared to do some of the work for this. But he was looking to find a connection with City Council or Keith, through Keith, and I'm just wondering how we would go about making those connections. That's just a general question I had, because I know Paul McClatchy's group is pretty busy, but I don't know if we should consider as Keith getting involved in sort of helping that thing happen, because it doesn't strike me as a very onerous task. I've looked through the literature a little bit on what's involved. but it would require a connection between the knowledgeable bird people, which would be the Kingston Field Naturalists, and someone on city staff. So any suggestions?
Councillor Neal?
I think that, and the clerk can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that falls under the criteria of our terms of reference. And
right.
We should also remember that there's a precedent for this. The whole, when I first became involved with Keith, the whole tree issue and what trees should be encouraged for the city to plant came out of a Keith recommendation. And today, the reason why we have all those healthy native species of trees is because of Keith's recommendation almost a decade ago. So I think this would be something that would be we could indeed take up, and I'd be interested in it. So.
Okay. If it's okay, then I'll just connect with John Donaghy and get the ball rolling, and maybe bring it to a future Keith meeting. Is that the best way to start, or should we go to somewhere else? I think Councillor Osanek was somehow contacted and maybe involved. So should I approach it that way? What do you say?
Oh, okay. That was a question to the chair. I couldn't jump in the chair. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would think we would, if you brought it to me and to the clerk, and then we can direct it back through with her recommendation, the appropriate other groups, or whether we can just directly add it to a meeting. We're in that gray zone where we have to get approval from ETIP and and back down. So
as I understand it, it could come as a notice of motion with a mover and a seconder from this group, and for our next meeting, and we could then invite people to come in delegation. The people who've contacted you could come in delegation. Madam Clerk,
okay.
Would that work?
Notice the motion should be in writing. So if we want to, what the chair was saying about bringing it to the chair as new business for the next meeting, we could do it that way.
Great.
Okay, I'll do that. I was hoping John would be on the committee this meeting so that he could add in, but I'll carry it forward with him. Thanks.
thank you. So the date of our next meeting is not determined. So we'll leave that to the clerk to get a hold of everybody. Can I have a mover and a seconder for adjournment? The councillors. It's a tie.
It's Pavlovian.
Yeah.
You say that word and councillors' hands always go up.
At 6:35, this could be a record. Thank you all for your work tonight. Appreciate it. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you.